There is a specific experience that people who love being at home know very well. Someone asks why you didn't come to the party, or why you left early, or why you would rather spend Friday night at home than in a bar with 30 people you sort of know. And before you answer, there is a moment where you run a quick internal calculation. Do I give the real answer? Do I explain that the idea of going home was not something you were reluctantly settling for, that it was, in fact, the thing you had been looking forward to all week? Or do I give the answer that doesn't require me to spend the next 10 minutes defending my social calendar? Most people who love staying home have learned to give the second answer, because the first one, the honest one, tends to produce a look. The specific look that says, you must be lonely, or anxious, or missing something, or all three. You are not missing something. The preference for home, for quiet, for an evening spent alone, is not a symptom. It is not shyness. It is not social anxiety necessarily. It is not depression. It is not evidence of an unhealed wound. For a significant percentage of the population, it is a neurological baseline, a brain that is wired to find the quiet more rewarding than the crowd, not to tolerate the quiet, to actively prefer it, to seek it, to feel the specific quality of something finally returning. This video is the neuroscience behind that preference, and the distinction between solitude as a feature or a response. Welcome to Dr. Cole's Dark Psychology. I'm Dr. Evan Cole, behavioral psychologist and behavioral analyst. This is a different kind of video for this channel, not an examination of a dark trait or a damaging pattern. An examination of a preference that most people who have it have spent some portion of their life either defending or apologizing for. The psychology of people who love staying home, what the neuroscience actually shows, why the preference exists. If you are watching this at home, on a Friday night, in the specific comfort of a space you chose, this one is for you. The neuroscience of the preference for home and solitude begins with a single chemical distinction: dopamine. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter associated with reward-seeking, motivation, and the anticipation of pleasure. It is the chemical that makes the idea of going somewhere feel exciting. Extroverted brains have higher dopamine sensitivity, meaning they respond more intensely to the anticipation of social reward, novelty, and external stimulation. This is why the extrovert genuinely finds the party energizing. The dopamine system is activated by the anticipation of it, the experience of it, and the memory of it afterward. The brain that prefers home operates differently, not a broken dopamine system, a dopamine system that is more sensitive, meaning smaller amounts of stimulation produce larger amounts of activation. The same party that energizes the extroverted brain activates the solitude-preferring brain past its optimal threshold. Not enjoyment followed by energy. Stimulation followed by the specific need to recover from having been too activated for too long. What restores the solitude-preferring brain is not more dopamine, it is acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter associated with relaxation, deep focus, and introspection. Reading, thinking, a quiet conversation with one person. The specific quality of being absorbed in something that does not require social performance. These activities do not drain the solitude-preferring brain, they refuel it. The second neurological feature of the home-preferring brain is structural. Research using brain imaging has found that people with a preference for solitude and inward-focused experience show more activity in the prefrontal cortex, the seat of deliberate thought, planning, language, and decision-making, compared to the temporal lobes and anterior cingulate cortex. This means the home-preferring brain is not failing to engage with the world. It is engaging with the world through a different architecture, one that is oriented toward internal processing, toward the examination of experience, the generation of ideas, the specific kind of thought that requires silence to become fully formed. This is why the home-preferring person often finds that their best thinking happens alone. Not because they are smarter in isolation, because the prefrontal cortex, which is running their processing, works better without the competition of social inputs demanding simultaneous attention. The noise is not neutral. For a brain that does its most meaningful work through internal processing, the noise is literally competing with the process. Quiet is not a preference, it is a working condition. Here is the finding from the 2025 Journal of Personality Research that changes the framework entirely. Preference for solitude is statistically distinct from introversion, not a synonym, not a subcomponent. A separate measurable trait, one that predicts how much time a person chooses to spend alone independently of introversion. There are extroverts who actively seek solitude, who need regular periods of being completely alone to function at their best. and who return to social environments energized by the solitude rather than depleted by the socialization. And the finding that surprised the researchers most: solitude holds measurable benefits for a broad spectrum of personality types. What this tells us is that the preference for home is not a personality defect. It is a relationship between a person and a state, one that is restorative, cognitively beneficial, and psychologically healthy when it is chosen rather than imposed. The key word is chosen. When a person who genuinely prefers solitude returns home after extended social engagement, something specific happens neurologically. The sympathetic nervous system, which was running the social performance, the monitoring, begins to downregulate. Cortisol drops. The prefrontal cortex can release the resources it was allocating to social processing. Research has confirmed that intentional solitude functions as an affective self-regulation tool, managing daily arousal. This is the specific experience that people who love staying home often struggle to explain. It is not that they hate people. It is not that they are sad. It is that the state of being home, not performing, produces psychological restoration. The home is not where you are doing nothing. It is where your brain is finally doing the thing it does best, without having to do 12 other things at the same time. The person who loves staying home lives in a culture that was designed around different neurological preferences. The metrics of a well-lived life, at least the publicly legible ones, are social. How many events you attended, how large your social circle, how often you are seen, present, engaged in the visible life of your community. The person whose brain finds the party draining and the book restoring is navigating expectations built for a different brain. And because the extroverted baseline is the assumed default, the person who prefers home often internalizes the cultural verdict. Something is wrong with me. I should want to be out there more. I should enjoy this more than I do. The fact that I am looking forward to leaving means something is missing. The research says otherwise. What is missing is not social engagement. What is missing is the understanding that the brain doing the preferring is not a defective version of the brain that prefers the party. It is a different brain, with a different neurotransmitter profile, a different prefrontal architecture, a different relationship to stimulation and recovery. The judgment is a category error. You are not failing to be an extrovert. You are succeeding at being exactly what you are. This is the part of the video that requires precision. The solitude that is a feature, the chosen, restorative preference for home, is not the same thing as the solitude that has become a response. There is a version of staying home that is the brain doing what it does best. That version is healthy, productive, and worth defending. And there is a version of staying home that began as preference and has slowly become avoidance. The social world stopped feeling draining and started feeling threatening. The home stopped feeling restorative and started feeling like the only place that felt safe. The distinction is not always clean, but there are two questions that tend to clarify it. First, when you imagine being out at a social event with people you actually like, does the anticipation feel like mild reluctance followed by genuine enjoyment when you get there? Or does it feel like dread? Mild reluctance that resolves into actual enjoyment is the solitude-preferring brain doing what it does. Dread that does not resolve. That is the signal worth attending to. Second, is the home a place you are choosing to be, or the only place you feel you can safely exist? The first is a preference. The second is something to take seriously, not with judgment, with care, and if necessary, with help. The person who loves staying home is not hiding. They are not missing out, in any neurologically meaningful sense, on the experiences that would complete them. They are living in a brain that processes the world through internal architecture, through the acetylcholine pathways, through the prefrontal cortex, through the specific restorative function of voluntary solitude, and that finds, in the quiet, the conditions it needs to do its most important work. That brain produced most of what you are reading, listening to, and thinking about right now. The research, the literature, the music that was written in solitude. The ideas that required a mind to stop receiving input long enough to generate output. The culture built by people who went home early is not a lesser culture. And the person who cannot explain, without feeling slightly defensive, why they prefer a Friday night at home over a Friday night out does not need a better explanation. They need a better framework. This is the framework. If this gave you a name for something you stopped trying to explain, that is the work this channel exists to do. Subscribe to Dr. Cole's Dark Psychology every week, the neuroscience underneath the behavior, the mechanism behind the pattern that makes no sense from outside it and feels completely natural from inside it. We'll see you in the next one, probably at home.